The alley reeked of damp asphalt and fear, the kind that clings to your skin and makes your heart pound like a war drum. Elena Harper pressed herself against the cold brick wall, her breath shallow, eyes darting toward the flickering street lamp where she'd seen it happen a man, gunned down in a flash of muzzle fire, his body crumpling like a discarded puppet. She hadn't meant to witness a murder, but now the killer's face was burned into her mind, and she knew he'd seen her too. Elena, a 28-year-old journalist with a knack for chasing stories that others avoided, had been following a lead on corruption in Port Haven, a sleepy coastal town in Maine. She'd heard whispers of a smuggling ring, of dirty cops and shadowy figures pulling strings behind closed doors. Tonight, she'd followed one of those shadows, a man named Victor Crane, a local businessman with a smile too sharp for trust. She hadn't expected to see him pull a gun, hadn't expected the blood or the way his eyes locked onto hers as she ducked behind a dumpster. Now her phone was dead, her car was blocks away, and the weight of what she'd seen pressed against her chest like a vice. She slipped through the alley, her boots silent against the pavement, every nerve screaming to run. But running wouldn't help. Not when Crane's men were already fanning out across town, their radios crackling with her description. Short auburn hair, green eyes, leather jacket. Elena needed a plan, a place to hide, and fast. Her mind raced to the one person she could trust, the one person who might understand the chaos she'd stumbled into: Sofia Alvarez, the artist who'd captured her heart 6 months ago in a fleeting, stolen moment at a gallery opening. Sofia lived on the edge of town in a small, weathered cottage overlooking the ocean. Elena had met her by chance, drawn to her quiet intensity, the way her dark curls framed her face as she spoke passionately about her paintings. Sofia, 30, was a woman of contrast, gentle yet fierce, her brown eyes carrying a depth of pain and hope that Elena couldn't resist. They danced around their feelings, sharing coffee dates and late-night talks, but never crossing the line into something more. Not yet. Now, with danger closing in, Elena's heart ached at the thought of pulling Sofia into this mess, but she had no choice. She needed her. The night air was sharp as Elena reached Sofia's cottage, the windows glowing faintly against the dark. She knocked softly, her pulse hammering. The door creaked open, and there was Sofia, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in Elena's disheveled state. "Elena? What's wrong?" Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, like she already sensed the storm. "I saw something I shouldn't have," Elena whispered, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "A murder. They're after me, Sofia. I didn't know where else to go." Sofia's eyes widened, but she didn't hesitate. She grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward the living room, where a small fire crackled in the hearth. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice steady despite the fear flickering in her gaze. As Elena recounted the night, the gunshot, the blood, Crane's cold stare, Sofia listened, her fingers tightening around Elena's. The warmth of her touch was an anchor, grounding Elena in the chaos. "We need to get you out of town," Sofia said when Elena finished. "If they're looking for you, they won't stop. Port Haven's too small to hide in for long." Elena shook her head. "I can't just run. If I do, they win. This story, it's bigger than me. Corruption, murder, all tied to Crane. If I don't expose him, no one will." Sofia's jaw tightened, a spark of defiance in her eyes. "Then we expose him. Together. But you're not doing this alone, Elena. Not while I'm here." The words hit Elena like a wave, stirring something deep inside her. She'd always been the lone wolf, chasing leads, dodging danger, never letting anyone close enough to hurt or help. But Sofia was different. Her courage, her quiet strength, made Elena want to believe they could face this together. For a moment, the room felt smaller, the space between them charged with unspoken promises. They spent the next hour planning. Sofia's cottage, tucked away from the main roads, was a temporary safe haven, but they couldn't stay long. Elena needed evidence, documents, recordings, anything to tie Crane to the murder and the smuggling ring. Sofia suggested breaking into Crane's office at the docks, where he kept his records. It was risky, suicidal even, but Elena's resolve was unshakable. She'd seen too much to back down now. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Sofia grabbed her coat and a flashlight. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Elena wanted to protest, to keep Sofia safe, but the look in her eyes, fierce, unwavering, silenced her. They were in this together, for better or worse. The docks were a maze of rusted shipping containers and creaking piers, the air thick with the scent of salt and oil. Elena and Sophia moved silently, sticking to the shadows as they approached Crane's office, a squat building at the edge of the water. The lock was old, easily picked with a hairpin from Sophia's bag. Inside, the air was stale, the desk cluttered with papers and a dusty computer. Elena's heart raced as she rifled through files, her fingers trembling with adrenaline. Sophia kept watch at the window, her silhouette tense against the faint morning light. "Got something?" Elena whispered, pulling out a ledger filled with coded transactions. Dates, numbers, names enough to start unraveling Crane's operation. But before she could dig deeper, Sophia hissed, "Someone's coming." Footsteps echoed outside, heavy and deliberate. Elena shoved the ledger into her bag, her mind racing. They couldn't fight, not against armed men. Sophia grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a back door. They slipped out just as the front door creaked open, voices barking orders. The women crouched behind a stack of crates, their breaths mingling in the cold air. Elena's eyes met Sophia's, and for a fleeting moment amidst the fear, there was something else: trust, connection, a spark that refused to be snuffed out. They waited, hearts pounding, until the voices faded. The ledger was a start, but they needed more. And they needed to survive. The morning sun barely pierced the fog that clung to Port Haven's docks, but Elena and Sophia couldn't linger. The ledger burned a hole in Elena's bag, its pages a ticking bomb that could either save them or seal their fate. They slipped away from the docks, weaving through backstreets to avoid Crane's men, who were surely combing the town by now. Sophia's cottage was no longer safe, not after Elena's trail led straight to it. They needed a new hideout, somewhere Crane wouldn't think to look. Sophia suggested her friend Marcus, a reclusive mechanic who lived in a trailer park on the outskirts of town. "He's trustworthy," Sophia said, her voice low as they ducked into a diner to regroup. "He's helped me before, no questions asked." Elena nodded, her mind still reeling from the close call at the docks. She stole a glance at Sophia, who was sipping coffee with a calm that belied the danger they were in. How did she do it? How did she stay so steady when everything was falling apart? Elena wanted to reach out, to tell her how much her presence meant, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she focused on the plan. "We need to decode this ledger," she said, tapping her bag. "It's our only leverage." The diner was quiet, save for the clink of dishes and the hum of a jukebox playing an old country tune. They kept their heads low, aware that every stranger could be a threat. Elena pulled out the ledger, flipping through its pages. The entries were cryptic initials, dates, and sums that didn't add up to any legitimate business. "This is it," she murmured. "Proof of the smuggling ring. But we need names, real names, not just initials." Sophia leaned closer, her shoulder brushing Elena's. "Look at the dates," she said, pointing to a column. "They matched the shipments that came through the docks last year. I remember because the town was buzzing about new jobs, but no one knew what was really going on." Elena's respect for Sophia grew. She wasn't just an artist with a soft heart. She was sharp, observant, piecing together clues Elena had missed. Their eyes met, and for a moment the diner faded away. Elena wanted to say something, anything to bridge the gap between them, but the weight of their situation pressed down. There was no time for feelings, not yet. They left the diner and headed for Marcus's trailer, a rusty airstream tucked behind a grove of pines. Marcus, a burly man in his 40s with grease-stained hands and a kind smile, didn't blink when Sophia explained their situation. "You need a place to crash, you got it," he said, gesturing to a small guest room in the trailer. "But if you're messing with Crane, you're playing with fire." "We know," Elena said, her voice firm. "But we're not backing down." Marcus lent them his old laptop, and Elena got to work cross-referencing the ledger's entries with public records she'd accessed through her journalist contacts. Sophia sat beside her, sketching absently in a notebook, her presence a quiet comfort. Hours passed, the trailer filled with the soft tapping of keys and the occasional crackle of Marcus's radio. Slowly, the ledger's code began to unravel. The initials pointed to local officials, a councilman, a police sergeant, even the mayor's aide. Crane wasn't just a businessman. He was the linchpin of a corrupt network that ran Port Haven. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. A news alert pinged on the laptop. A body had been found near the docks, identified as a local fisherman who'd been asking too many questions. Elena's stomach churned. "They're tying up loose ends," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're next if we don't move fast." Sophia's hand found hers under the table, her touch warm and steady. "We'll get through this," she said, her eyes fierce with determination. "We have to." That night, unable to sleep, Elena slipped outside to clear her head. The trailer park was quiet, the stars bright above the pines. Sophia joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both as they sat on the trailer's steps. "Why do you do this?" Sophia asked softly. "Chase these stories, risk your life?" Elena hesitated, the question cutting deeper than she expected. "Because someone has to," she said finally. "Because if no one stands up, people like Crane win. And I can't live with that." Sophia's gaze softened and she leaned closer, her breath warm against Elena's cheek. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. "Not if you don't want to be." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Elena's heart raced, not from fear this time, but from the pull she felt toward Sophia. She wanted to close the distance, to let herself feel something other than the weight of the truth she carried. But before she could, a car's headlights swept across the trailer park, and Marcus's voice called out, "Get inside. Now." Crane's men had found them. The headlights cut through the dark like knives, pinning Elena and Sophia to the trailer's steps. Marcus shoved them inside, his voice low and urgent. "Back room now. Stay quiet." Elena's pulse thundered as she grabbed Sophia's hand, pulling her toward the guest room. They crouched behind a flimsy curtain, the ledger clutched to Elena's chest. Outside, car doors slammed, and voices barked orders. Crane's men, no doubt, their boots crunching on the gravel. Marcus's trailer was a flimsy shield, its thin walls offering little protection. Elena's mind raced for an escape, but the trailer park was isolated, surrounded by woods and open fields. There was nowhere to run. Sophia's hand tightened around hers, her eyes steady despite the fear. "We'll be okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the hope in Sophia's gaze, but the reality was grim. They were trapped, and the men outside weren't here to negotiate. Marcus appeared at the door, his face grim. "They're circling the trailer. I can stall them, but you need to go out the back window. There's a path through the woods to the highway. Move fast." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Marcus. For everything." He waved her off, his eyes softening. "Just keep Sophia safe. She's family." The window was small, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Elena went first, landing softly in the grass, then helped Sophia down. The night was cold, the woods a dark labyrinth ahead. They ran, branches snapping underfoot, the ledger heavy in Elena's bag. Behind them, shouts erupted. Marcus's voice, loud and defiant, buying them time. Elena's heart ached at the thought of what he might face, but there was no turning back. The woods were dense, the path barely visible in the moonlight. Sophia stumbled and Elena caught her, their hands lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "You okay?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sophia nodded, her breath ragged. "Keep going. I'm with you." They reached the highway just as dawn began to break, the sky a bruise of purple and gray. A truck stop glowed in the distance, its neon sign a beacon of temporary safety. They slipped inside, blending with the early morning crowd of truckers and travelers. Elena's mind was a storm of plans and fears. The ledger was their only weapon, but it wasn't enough, not yet. They needed to get it to someone who could act, someone outside Crane's reach. Sophia suggested a contact from her art world days, a lawyer named Rachel Voss, who'd moved to Boston after exposing corruption in her hometown. "She's tough," Sophia said, her voice steadier now. "If anyone can help, it's her." Elena agreed, but getting to Boston meant crossing state lines, and Crane's influence stretched far. They used the truck stop's payphone to call Rachel, keeping the conversation brief. "We're in trouble," Elena said, her voice low. "We have evidence, but we need protection. Can you meet us?" Rachel's response was immediate. "Get to the city. I'll find you a safe house. Don't trust anyone else." The journey to Boston was a blur of stolen moments and heightened nerves. They hitched a ride with a kind-eyed trucker who asked no questions, dropping them at a Greyhound station. On the bus, Sophia rested her head on Elena's shoulder, her warmth a quiet comfort amidst the chaos. Elena's thoughts drifted to the night they'd met, to Sophia's laugh and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her art. She hadn't realized then how much Sophia would come to mean, how her presence would anchor her in the storm. Boston's skyline loomed as they arrived, the city a maze of possibilities and dangers. Rachel met them at a nondescript coffee shop, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She was in her 50s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and a briefcase that screamed authority. "You've got guts," she said, glancing at the ledger Elena slid across the table. "This is dynamite, but it's not enough to take Crane down. We need a witness. Someone who'll testify." Elena's heart sank. She was the witness, the only one who'd seen the murder. Testifying meant putting herself and Sophie in the crosshairs. But Rachel's gaze was unflinching. "You're not alone," she said. "I've got contacts in the FBI. We can protect you, but you have to trust me." Sophia's hand found Elena's under the table, her touch a silent promise. "We trust you," Sophia said, speaking for them both. Elena's chest tightened, a mix of fear and gratitude. She wasn't used to relying on anyone, but with Sophia beside her, she felt stronger, braver. Rachel arranged for them to stay in a safe house on the city's outskirts, a small apartment guarded by 2 FBI agents. But even there, the tension didn't ease. Elena pored over the ledger, connecting more dots, while Sophia sketched in her notebook, her drawings a mix of beauty and pain. One night, as rain battered the windows, Sophia showed Elena a sketch of 2 women standing in an alley, hands intertwined, faces defiant. "This is us," she said softly. "No matter what happens." Elena's throat tightened. She reached for Sophia's hand, their fingers lacing together. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she admitted, her voice raw. Sophia's smile was small but radiant. "You don't have to find out." The safe house was a cage of thin walls and restless nights, the kind of place where every creak sounded like a threat. Elena and Sophia spent their days decoding the ledger, piecing together Crane's network with Rachel's help. The FBI was building a case, but it hinged on Elena's testimony, a truth that weighed heavier with each passing hour. She'd seen the murder, could describe Crane's face, the gun, the cold precision of it all. But testifying meant stepping into the light, exposing herself to a man who'd already killed to protect his secrets. Sophia was her anchor, her quiet strength a lifeline. They'd grown closer in the safe house, their bond deepening in stolen moments, a brush of hands, a shared glance, a whispered confession in the dark. One night, as they sat on the apartment's worn couch, Sophia rested her head on Elena's chest, her voice soft. "When this is over, I want to paint you. Not just your face, but who you are. The fire in you." Elena's heart swelled, but fear lingered. "What if it's never over?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What if Crane gets to us first?" Sophia lifted her head, her eyes fierce. "He won't. We're stronger than him. Together." The words were a spark, igniting something in Elena. She leaned in, her lips brushing Sophia's in a kiss that was both tentative and electric. Sophia kissed her back, her hands cupping Elena's face, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. It was just them, 2 women caught in a storm, finding solace in each other. But the storm wasn't far off. The next morning, Rachel burst into the apartment, her face grim. "We've got a problem. One of my contacts says Crane's men are closing in. Someone leaked the safe house location." Elena's blood ran cold. "How?" "We've been careful." Rachel shook her head. "Doesn't matter now. We need to move you. Tonight." The FBI agents scrambled, arranging a transfer to a new location. But as night fell, the plan unraveled. A black SUV pulled up outside, its headlights off. Elena peered through the blinds, her heart racing as she recognized one of Crane's men from the docks. "They're here," she whispered, grabbing Sophia's hand. The agents drew their weapons, barking orders to stay low. But the safe house was compromised, and escape was their only option. Rachel led them to a back exit, a narrow stairwell that led to an alley. "There's a car waiting 2 blocks away," she said. "Run and don't look back." The alley was a blur of shadows and adrenaline. Elena and Sophia sprinted, their hands clasped, the ledger still in Elena's bag. Gunshots rang out behind them, sharp and deafening. One of the agents shouted, a cry cut short. Elena's chest burned, but she kept running, Sophia's grip anchoring her. They reached the car, a nondescript sedan, and dove inside. Rachel slammed the gas, tires screeching as they sped into the night. The new safe house was a cabin in the Massachusetts woods, far from the city's reach. But safety felt like an illusion. Crane's men were relentless, their network deeper than anyone had realized. Elena and Sophia barely slept, their nights filled with plans and fears. Rachel worked tirelessly, coordinating with the FBI, but the case was moving too slowly. Crane was still out there, still hunting. One evening, as they sat by the cabin's fireplace, Sophia opened up about her past. I lost someone, she said, her voice quiet. My sister. She got caught up in drugs in a world like Crane's. I couldn't save her. Her eyes glisten with unshed tears. That's why I'm here, Elena. Why I won't let you do this alone. Elena's heart ached. She pulled Sophia close, their foreheads touching. I'm so sorry, she whispered. But you're not alone either. Not anymore. Their love grew in the quiet moments, a beacon against the darkness. But the darkness was closing in. Rachel received word that Crane had bribed a federal agent, compromising their protection. The cabin wasn't safe. They needed to act, to take the fight to Crane before he found them. Elena proposed a risky plan. Leak a fake location to draw Crane out, then ambush him with the FBI. It was dangerous, but it was their only shot. Sophia agreed, her resolve matching Elena's. They spent the night preparing, Rachel coordinating with trusted agents. The plan was set for dawn, at an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. As they waited in the pre-dawn chill, Sophia took Elena's hand. Whatever happens, she said, I'm glad I found you. Elena's throat tightened. Me too, she whispered, and in that moment, she knew she'd fight for Sophia, for them no matter the cost. The warehouse loomed like a skeleton in the dawn light, its rusted beams casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. Elena and Sophia crouched behind a stack of crates, their breaths shallow, the ledger tucked safely in Elena's bag. The FBI had set the trap, leaking a false report that Elena was hiding here, alone. Crane had taken the bait, his SUV rolling into the lot with 3 armed men. But the plan wasn't perfect. Crane was smarter than they'd hoped, and the air crackled with the threat of betrayal. Elena's eyes locked on Sophia's, a silent vow passing between them. They'd come too far to lose each other now. Rachel, hidden nearby with the FBI team, signaled through an earpiece. He's here. Stay low. Crane stepped out of the SUV, his face as cold as the night Elena had seen him kill. He scanned the warehouse, his men fanning out, guns drawn. Elena's heart pounded, but Sophia's hand in hers kept her grounded. The FBI was supposed to move in, but seconds stretched into eternity, and doubt crept in. Had the corrupt agent sold them out? The answer came in a burst of gunfire. One of Crane's men spotted an FBI agent, and chaos erupted. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and Elena pulled Sophia down, shielding her as they crawled toward cover. Rachel's voice crackled through the earpiece. Hold position. We're moving in. But Crane was faster. He spotted Elena's movement, his eyes narrowing with recognition. You, he growled, raising his gun. Time slowed as Elena shoved Sophia behind a crate, her body braced for impact. But the shot never came. An FBI agent tackled Crane, the gun skittering across the floor. The warehouse became a battlefield, agents clashing with Crane's men in a storm of shouts and gunfire. Elena and Sophia stayed low, their hands clasped, hearts racing. When the gunfire stopped, the silence was deafening. Crane was in cuffs, his men subdued. But the cost was high. One agent lay wounded, another dead. Rachel emerged, her face grim but relieved. It's over, she said. You did it. Elena's legs trembled as she stood, the ledger still clutched to her chest. She'd done itched exposed Crane, brought his empire crashing down. But as she looked at Sophia, her dark curls tangled in her eyes fierce with love, she knew the real victory was standing beside her. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Elena testified in a closed hearing, her words sealing Crane's fate. The ledger, combined with her account, unraveled his network, leading to arrests across Port Haven and beyond. The town, once suffocated by corruption, began to breathe again. Elena's story ran on the front page of every major paper, her name synonymous with courage. But for Elena, the true story was Sophia. They moved to Boston, leaving Port Haven's shadows behind. Sophia's paintings filled their small apartment, bursts of color that told stories of survival and love. One evening, as they stood on their balcony overlooking the city, Sophia slipped her arms around Elena's waist. "We made it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Elena turned, her lips finding Sophia's in a kiss that held all the promises they'd made in the dark. "We did," she said, her heart full. "Because of you." Their love wasn't just a spark in the Chausse, it was the fire that had carried them through. They'd faced death, fear, and betrayal, but they'd found each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.